The common mistake that leaders make over and over and over again. I'm going to tell you this one's a big one. And one of the things you've got to understand is that there's a big difference between consistency and charisma. Today, we're talking about the psychology of influence. This is the result of your leadership. Leadership is not about making speeches. It's about actually building trust with people. What you'll find, though, is as you're thinking about leading and you're thinking about influencing the people that are following you, you'll find that they're actually asking themselves three very specific questions the very first time that they meet you. Three very specific questions. Here they are. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Owolabi podcast. Man, it is good to see you guys today because today we're talking about something that I believe is not talked about very often. It's something that I think is really important to you understanding how leadership actually works. Today we're talking about the psychology of influence. Now, you know this, and I know this, that leadership is influence. John Maxwell said that, nothing more, nothing less. That's what leadership is. But how does influence actually work? There's 1,000 great books on influence, and I encourage you to read any one of them. But one of the things I think is so important to talk about is how it actually works in contemporary society. How has it worked through history? How it can work in your organization? How you can lead better because you understand how influence works. Now, here's the thing, though. As I'm explaining some of these concepts to you, I want you to know that I'm going to be using some examples, specific examples of why people follow certain leaders and why they don't follow other leaders. Now, just because people follow a leader doesn't mean that the leader and the direction that they're going is a good one. It just means that the leader is pretty dang effective in taking them in a particular direction. And we're going to talk about why that leader is effective, not so much about the direction that they're going. So you got to understand that from the top. So let's go ahead and start. So one of the things that you'll hear from leadership books and leadership conferences is that people follow a vision. It's important to have vision. If you're somebody who grew up in the church, you might have heard this phrase, without vision, people perish. Vision is super important, and vision is important in leadership. But here's the thing. People don't actually follow a vision. They follow people. They follow relationships with other people. Leadership is simply a relationship between the follower and the leader. That's all it is. And if you can have an incredible vision, but you have terrible relationships with the people that you're leading, they're not going to follow you that much longer. You have a limited shelf life. It's not just about vision. It's beyond that. It's about the relationship with the person who holds the vision. That makes the biggest difference. What you'll find, though, is as you're thinking about leading and you're thinking about influencing the people that are following you, you'll find that they're actually asking themselves three very specific questions the very first time that they meet you. Three very specific questions. Here they are. The first one is, are you safe? The second question is, are you real? And then the third question is, do you see me? Are you safe? Are you real? Do you see me? When they ask those three questions, and if you check all of those boxes correctly, then they start to give you trust over time, slowly giving you trust over time. The more you can answer those questions to the affirmative, the faster people can start to follow you. It's about the relationship with who you are more than it is the vision of where you're going. Let's break those things down each one at a time. The first one is, are you safe? Now, here's the thing. People want to feel like you have their best interest in mind. They want to feel like when you're in front of them, when you're talking, you're definitely talking about the direction of the country, you're talking about the direction of the company, you're talking about the direction of the church, sure, but you have their best interest in mind. If they get on the bus with you, you're going to take them somewhere, their life somewhere where they couldn't take themselves. And they feel safe with you because you're not in it for your own reasons, you're in it for them. When you can communicate that idea, then you start to become safer. This is where the department is going, and you are going to benefit. The whole company will, and the whole church will, and the whole country will, sure. But you specifically will benefit. That's when people start to feel safe. One of the things I've seen over the last 25 years is politicians, specifically presidential politicians, do an incredible job of this. Some have been horrible at this, and some have been unbelievably effective. I'll give you two quick examples. The first one, Donald Trump. Regardless of what you think of him, man, he made at least 50% of the American population feel safe. He wasn't in it for himself from their perspective. He was in it for them. There's a couple boxes that people could check right away to say, this guy, man, he is in it for me. He makes me feel safe. This is a subconscious thing that they're saying. The first one was he refused to take a salary. Being president pays $400,000 a year. And he was like, nope, I'm not going to take that salary. The second thing is, the very first time around when he ran for president, he funded his entire campaign. He's like, I'm not going to take money from special interests and big money lobbyists. I'm going to do this because I love you. He made people feel safe. The third thing is he made sure that he said things that other people were thinking, but didn't want to say it on their own. People would say to themselves, man, I love that guy because he's willing to take the hits for me. He's able to say the things in public that I would love to say in public. But this guy is saying it for me. He's making me laugh. He's funny, da-da-da-da. That's what they were thinking. And so ultimately, man, he makes me feel safe because he's out there taking the hits and he's communicating in a way that I wish I could. At least 50% of the population believe that. Right or wrong, they all believe that. Therefore, he won 2 elections. Now, making people safe is really, really important. It's about what they're thinking in their own head about who you are as a leader. Barack Obama is another example. He did this really, really well. You can see in his 2008 presidential acceptance speech, the night after he won or the night he won, he gets up and he starts giving the speech. And if you're watching it on YouTube, what you'll see is the camera panned to all these people in the audience. I mean, literally, you've got old ladies, you've got 20-year-old men, you've got 40-year-old moms just crying because this guy is like the next incarnation. They believe in him so much, he makes them feel so safe. He has their best interest in mind. And finally, someone is going to champion the cause on my behalf. When you make people feel safe, suddenly they are willing to follow you, probably more so than they would in any other circumstance. The first one is, are you safe? Do you make me feel safe? Second question that people tend to ask is this, and this again is a psychological question. Second question people tend to ask is, are you real? Are you authentic? This is really, really important. And one of the things that we find with leaders is sometimes they put on a coat. We'll call it the leadership coat. When you show up to work, you put a coat on and you've got to be full of energy and you've got to have all the right answers and you got to make sure that everything's exactly where it's supposed to be. And when you walk through the hallways, you got to carry yourself a certain way. But then when you go home, now you can let your hair down. Now you can be yourself. You can put your sweatpants on. You can dress however you want to. When you go to the gym, you are who you are. When you're at church, you're a different person. And then, when you hang out with your buddies, you're a different person. When you're fishing, you're a different person. When you're back at work, now you're a leader. That kind of duplicity, that erodes you from the inside out. People want to know that you are the exact same person everywhere you go. Now you can be a different version of yourself for sure. Like you don't have to, be the same with your brothers as you are with your coworkers. You don't have to be that, but you do need to be pretty close to similar. You cannot be miles apart in your character in different spaces. People have to believe that you are very, very, very similar to who you are in front of them right now as you would be in front of somebody else. That's really important. The idea behind that is called relational congruence. You are the same person in every setting, in every relationship, at every task. People should not be surprised by the words that come out of your mouth when you're in a different room with different people. People aren't asking, this is 2026, people are no longer asking, hey, do you have all the right answers? They're not asking, are you the authority on this? They're not asking that. If they're going to follow you beyond just getting information from you, if they're actually going to follow you and give you their best effort, they're not going to ask, are you right all the time? Are you an authority all the time? They're going to ask, are you real? Are you authentic? That's the first question that people tend to ask. The next question that people tend to ask is this. They tend to ask psychologically, do you see me? Do you see me? Do you see who I am? Do you see what I'm trying to do? Do you see what I'm struggling with? Do you see what I'm going through? I love this question because this means that you've got to be somewhat empathetic. Like even if you don't personally experience what they're experiencing, you got to at least be able to use your imagination and put yourself in their shoes and start to say, okay, if I was them, what would I do? If I had this background, if I had this situation, if I had this deck of cards, how would I play it? When you start to understand the situation that people are in, you start to automatically become empathetic. When you use your imagination to say, gosh, if I was this person, this is what would be challenging for me. You start to become more and more empathetic. And this is a great tool in leadership because you do this subconsciously. You do this behind the scenes. You do this before you show up to the meeting. You start thinking about the people that you're talking to. Here's why. People automatically, when you walk in the room, they can feel whether or not you care about them. This is something that you can't fake. You can't make other people feel important if you subconsciously feel like they're a nobody. If you feel like they are just a loser, in the back of your mind, that's going to come out in your speech. You can't fake that. Now, we've already established that you can't fake that. Like, people have to believe that you actually see them, that you actually care for them. When I say, people ask themselves the question, do you see me? They're asking themselves the question, do you see not only who I am, but who I can become, who I might be in the future? Are you building the plans for the company and for the country and for the church? Are you building these plans around my potential? Have you taken my story into account? And when you're able to communicate that clearly and say, you know what, absolutely, I do see you, and this is how the direction we're headed is going to benefit you, suddenly you start to answer that question in people's mind to the affirmative. In fact, here's what we all know, and you know this to be true, and studies have shown this over and over and over again, that people are far more likely to work extra hard for people that they believe actually like them. If they believe that you like them as a person, like you actually like who they are, you like their personality, you laugh at their jokes, whatever. If they believe that you're the kind of guy, you're the kind of lady that they can just hang out with, they believe that you like them, then suddenly they're far more willing to work extra hard for the vision, work extra hard for the community, extra hard for the church, extra hard for the company. When people ask themselves the question, do you see me? They're asking far more than do you see me standing in front of you. They're asking about vision. They're asking about purpose. They're asking about ultimately, do you want to be in relationship with me? Do you see me and who I am? All right. Now, if we're talking about the psychology of influence, one of the things you got to understand is the common mistake that leaders make over and over and over again. I'm going to tell you this one's a big one. I've seen leaders all over the world, from Croatia to Costa Rica, and you find leaders making the same mistake again and again and again, which is they think that trust, which is absolutely critical in leadership, is all about making big speeches. It's all about coming up in the meeting and saying something really clever or something really smart, and everyone's saying, wow, you're an amazing boss. And then they can just sort of wipe their hands and walk away. They just did their leadership thing because they said something really smart in one instance. That's not leadership, and that's not how influence is built. In fact, that's not why people follow people. It's not about one speech. It's about building trust over time. Now, here's the thing you got to understand. In any relationship, any leadership relationship, trust is like oxygen. When the trust is gone, everything gets infinitely harder. If your leadership is really hard right now, there's a really good chance that trust is low. But when trust is high, everything gets easier. And the way you build trust is through small, consistent actions over time. Now, I didn't know this. When I first became a leader, I had no idea. In fact, I thought that giving great speeches was really the beginning and end of leadership. Somebody came and asked me a question, give them a big speech, and there you go. Now, you know what to do, and I'm a great leader. That's not how it worked. I learned this a really, really hard way, in a story I've told a couple times. I want to tell it to you here. When I actually stood up for my very first leadership opportunity, it was when I was in 8th grade. I was 13. And I thought to myself that I was going to do something that was absolutely incredible. I was going to run for student council president. I'm in 8th grade. The student council is something that's new to me. I've never been on student council before. In fact, I was a new kid in the school. The school had hundreds of kids, and I just got there from another school, never been there before. And the very first couple of weeks, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to run for president. Not having known anybody at all, right? So I had big cojones, and I thought, okay, let's go ahead and do this. So I go ahead and I put my name in, and then I realized after I did that you have to give a big speech in front of the entire school in order to be voted in as president. Everyone who was candidating for president had to give one big speech. I didn't know that. And so I realized that I had to go ahead and prepare. I'd never given a speech like this before in front of this many people. So I prepare and I prepare and I prepare, and I'm trying my best, and it's not good. In fact, the night before, I'm sweating. I'm really, really working hard to try to get this speech right. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to structure it, whatever. So I'm writing it down on a piece of paper by hand. And then the next morning comes, and the entire school comes into the auditorium, and they're all sitting there, and I'm first one up. I get up on the podium. Again, never spoke to this many people before, hundreds of kids, all my peers. And I'm reading off this sheet that I wrote the night before, and all of a sudden, I start to sweat. I'm really sweating. And you got to know me, I'm a sweater. So it's just rolling down my eyes, and it's dripping off my eyelids, and it's actually falling on my paper. And now I actually cannot read my paper because I'm sweating so hard. It's just this embarrassing mess. And then I finish the speech, and I go sit down, and I'm like, all right, I'm an idiot. Leaders give great speeches. I clearly didn't give a good one. But then the next two people who were running for president, two girls. They came up one after another. The first one that comes up, her notes are all typewritten in perfect little index cards. Like her mom and dad helped her with it weeks and weeks before. My mom and dad didn't even know I ran for president, right? Their mom and dad helped her weeks and weeks before. And so she's reading it off of it, perfectly polished. She sits down and gets this massive round of applause. The next girl comes up exactly the same. Her notes are even better, color-coded, typed out, perfectly timed, everything, no mistakes, everything's perfect. Sit down and I'm thinking, all right, well, that's it. Because leadership is about giving great speeches, and clearly I didn't. And so I'm done. Later in the day, we're sitting there, it's 8th period, and the announcement comes on. The principal comes over the announcements, and the principal starts reading and saying, hey, for the elections for junior high class president, we had 3 candidates, and I'm pleased to announce the winner right now. And I'm sitting there on the edge of my seat, partly thinking there's no way that I won, but hoping that I might have. And all of a sudden, the principal says, and the winner of the junior high student class president race is Dan Owolabi. I couldn't believe it. I actually won. I remember just running around being so excited, thinking that speech must have been incredible. It must have been way better than I thought. I am so good. All right. Well, it turned out that I did win. Not because my speech was great. It turned out that I won because in electoral politics, it's really all about who votes for you. And because there was one boy and 2 girls, the 2 girls split the girl vote, and I got all the guys. And so I won 50% of the population just because of my chromosomes. And so the rest of the year, though, this is the point. The rest of the year, though, I thought I was an incredible leader, but I wasn't. In fact, I actually didn't care very much about the students that I was leading because, shoot, I hardly knew them. I was a new kid. I didn't put anything in place because I thought that, shoot, I'm just here to be a figurehead. And ultimately, at the very end of the year ended pretty embarrassingly for me because one thing that happened in the year that I didn't expect was that the people who had lost the election, those 2 girls in particular, they started to see my behavior. They saw that I still didn't get great grades. They saw that I still didn't show up for class on time. They saw that I didn't actually do any of the things I said I was going to do in my speech or even after my speech. And they realized that I wasn't living up to the things that I said I was going to do. And there was a low level of trust between me and everybody else in the 8th grade class. And that was the year, believe it or not, where Bill Clinton was being impeached. And the word impeachment was in the air. And everybody was all about this new word impeachment. Well, what happened was those 2 girls went around and they created a petition. And one at a time, they went to people and they said, do you think Dan Owolabi should be impeached as 8th grade class president? And people that I knew, people that I was friends with, people that I sat at the lunch table with, people on my basketball team signed that petition one at a time. Now, they wouldn't give it to the guidance counselor. And the guidance counselor, of course, being smart, shoot, it's 8th grade, right? What's 8th grade impeachment look like? The guidance counselor threw it away. But not before she called me in her office. And she showed me, look, this is the result of your leadership. Leadership is not about making speeches. It's about actually building trust with people. That was a hard lesson to learn, but the reason why I tell you that is because oftentimes you and I think that it's all about one major charismatic moment that makes a huge difference in your leadership. And it's not that. It is the long, slow slog of earning trust with people one at a time. It's small quantities over a long period of time that makes a big difference. And one of the things you've got to understand is that there's a big difference between consistency and charisma. You can have charisma, that's fine. People are automatically drawn to you. They think that you're a funny person. They think that you're an engaging person. They think that you're an empathetic person, whatever. They think that you're the kind of person that they want to hang out with. And when they hang out with you, they feel better about themselves. That's fine. But consistency is far more important than charisma. Consistency is what people follow when they start to get close to you. Charisma is what gets them close. Consistency is what keeps them close over time. So it's important as a leader to be consistent in the work that you're doing, day in and day out, building trust through consistent actions. Now, here's the big idea. This is the point of the story. If I would have known the 3 subconscious questions that people were asking as soon as I got on the stage, I would not have put so much effort into my speech. I wouldn't have put so much effort into, making it look like I was a president instead of actually being a president. I would have focused on making sure that I was authentic and real, making sure that I saw them, and making sure that they felt safe. I would have put more effort into that. In fact, what I would have done is I would have asked them specifically, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do to be helpful for you? How can I make your experience in 8th grade and 7th grade and 6th grade even better? I would have thought about maybe we should have pizza instead of chicken nuggets. I would have thought maybe it's important to have new nets on the basketball hoops. Maybe I would have thought more about having different games or different opportunities for people to really connect with each other. There's all kinds of things I would have done if I would have understood what it really meant to gain influence with people. And that's what I want for you. I don't want you to waste time doing things that don't lead to actual influence with people. It's important as a leader to understand very specifically what people are asking the moment they start looking at you as if you are their leader.